Hello, and welcome to lesson 22 of the Learning Guitar series. In this particular lesson, we're going to look at the chords that we can derive from a shape of D minor when it comes to Dorian. And when I say shape of D minor, I basically mean this particular shape. So like the D minor open chord as we know it, and we're transposing it. In the previous lesson, we looked at it from the point of view of G minor. So it's D minor transposed. In this case, it's the 5th fret, and you have your G minor. As you can see, in the first two boxes, I inserted the scale and the arpeggio, so that the following chords, you have a reference for them. You see where the logic behind how these chords are framed comes from. There is some observation that needs to be done though. So first of all, at least the way I perceive chords, I tend to see them as somehow part of the scale. So what that means is, of course, a minor chord is as such because it contains a flat 3. We kind of know that. We studied that into harmony and theory. So like, this is G minor, right? And that's my flat 3, okay? That's what gives it, this is my flat 3 if I'm playing, this particular shape. And the flat 3 is what gives it a minor flavor, as a matter of fact. Although you'll notice in some of the chords here that I actually omitted it. Let's have a look at this one, for example, 1, 5, 6, 11. And a similar example would be 1, 5, flat 7, 11, which is where you find it here. So why I'm including these chords, these shapes, even if they're not strictly minor, actually, the lack of a flat 3 doesn't allow me to say that's a minor, okay? But because I included them because I perceive them as possible passing chords. Let me give you an example. So one thing I like to do when practicing chord is to pick up a string and kind of play a melody on top of it and try to get all the chords following that melody. In other words, since we studied two shapes of Dorian, I can have a line that goes, G, A, B flat, C. These are all notes of Dorian, okay? And I can find chords among these shapes that includes them all. So that's how I like to, study shapes. Trying to find chords that follow that particular melody in this case. Okay? So for example, let's take this chord. This is the one I was mentioning, 1, 5, flat 7, and 11. Doesn't really contain the thirds, but allows me to do this. It's a passing chord. This will include the third, okay? So sometimes you see chords, at least in my PDFs, which might not, although I define them as minor, to me they're minor sounds. In this particular case, they're not theoretically speaking, strictly speaking, minor, because in this case they kind of omit the flat third. I just wanted to clarify that, so when you come across that, you understand why I'm including them. They're still part of the scale, right? So to me, from my point of view, 3 notes out of this scale is still a chord in that particular key. So these are, to me, they're all G minor, okay? In the two shapes. Also, something else that I want you to notice at this stage, although we're going to talk about it more extensively when we discuss chord substitutions, is the similarities that you'll find across. I mean, like say, the very first lesson, so lesson 1, we did shape of E. So we looked at, say, G major, big chord, okay? Now, if you look at this PDF, I think it's on the 3rd page, you'll find the same shape here. This is what we commonly know as, a shape of E, but because I'm looking at it from the point of view of G as root note, now the same shape spells flat 3, flat 7, flat 3, 5, flat 7, flat 3 from the point of view of G. So now I'm looking at this particular shape as a minor, not anymore as a major chord. What that means is, this is G major, but if you look at this chord chart, let's pretend that we're looking at this chord chart from the point of view of G, okay? We're in the key of G. Now we have this. which is obviously B flat major. But if there is a G in the bass, now that's a G minor 7. So just don't get confused in seeing shapes you're familiar with because you studied them in major and suddenly they're applied in minor. The thing about the PDF is I always put the root note. Either is actually played, like, you know, when you see like a black dot like this, or is there as a reference for you. Even if it's not played, you know where the root note is. And I think that's the important part. Last thing, so like the PDF, pretty simple. Like it's 3 pages of it, different structures. So like, you know, over 4 strings, over 5 strings. You got the top 3 strings, middle 3 strings. You know, different possible combination, and the genre you're playing kind of will dictate somehow which one. You know, of course you can use them all. Something like the one exercise. Now that you have 2 shapes for Dorian, is what I was kind of mentioning before. Taking a note from the scale, you know, in an horizontal manner, or this. These are just Dorian notes, right? And create chords on top of that and connect these melody notes to. Now this is like using the last 4 strings. That's a 9th, okay? Same thing you would do with this one, so like 3 notes maybe. That's with a flat 3 in the bass. That's basically a B flat major 7 right now, but I'm thinking of it in terms of G minor. It's just a flat 3 in the bass. And of course you can have the 5th in the bass too, right? With a 4th in the bass. So basically, as I mentioned, you might want to pick up a few, you know, shapes from, and simply try and connect them, create like little melodies, little chord melodies. Because I think the most difficult thing about studying chords is actually retaining them. So, you know, you have pages and pages of, like this, you know, like pages and pages of chord shapes. And, you know, how do you end up remembering them? Okay. And to me, at least in my personal opinion, the best way is to actually make some music, and some of them will stick. You know, the ones that either you find more comfortable finger-wise will stick, or the one that sonically, you know, you really like the sound of them. So even if at first they don't, you know, you don't seem to be getting them straight away, you know, you work on it, okay? And as I said, like, you know, 3 notes is a chord, 4 notes is a chord, 5 notes is a chord, 2 notes is a double stop. Although, again, when you're playing, you know, it's always kind of there's always some of that included. So, you know, these are double stops. That's a chord. So, like, in a way, playing rhythm guitar. You have like some double stops. These are double stops, 2 notes. Very common when it comes to Dorian, but intervealed with chords. This is a 4-note chords. Single note. I hope it makes sense. So, sorry. With regard with this lesson, this is pretty much it. Okay, thank you very much and see you next time.